The corridor that shouldn't exist. A sci-fi story. Part 1. The first extension. The starship Valkyrie was not a vessel prone to surprises. She was a survey craft, built for long-range reconnaissance, her corridors mapped down to the centimeter, her compartments logged, sealed, and cross-checked by 3 independent systems. Every bulkhead had a purpose. Every conduit had a destination. Nothing on the ship existed without being designed, approved, and installed by human hands. Which was why Lieutenant Kira Ellen stood frozen in the middeck junction, staring at a corridor that absolutely, definitively, mathematically should not have been there. It branched off from Junction C7 like a limb grafted onto a body without permission. Smooth, seamless, and wrong. The lighting strips along the ceiling glowed with the same soft white as the rest of the ship, but they were unfamiliar in their spacing. The floor plating was the same brushed alloy, but the pattern of microgrooves was subtly misaligned. The air smelled faintly of ozone, as if the corridor had been freshly fabricated. Except no one had fabricated anything. Kira blinked hard, once, twice, then checked the wall panel beside her. The ship's layout appeared in crisp holographic blue. Junction C7. 3 branching corridors. Storage, hydroponics, maintenance. No 4th corridor. She tapped the panel. It flickered, recalibrated, and displayed the same layout. No anomaly. No extension. No glitch. Her pulse quickened. "Bridge, this is Lieutenant Ellen," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm at C7. I've got a structural inconsistency." A beat of silence. Then Captain Reese Calder's voice came through, calm but alert. "Define inconsistency." "You're going to want to see this yourself, sir." Another pause. "On my way." Kira stepped back from the corridor, resisting the urge to draw her sidearm. It wasn't protocol to aim a weapon at architecture, but the corridor felt less like a place and more like a presence. Awaiting one. Footsteps approached from behind. Captain Calder rounded the corner, followed by Chief Engineer Sato and Security Officer Jalen Ward. Calder's eyes narrowed as soon as he saw the corridor. "That wasn't here yesterday," he said. "It wasn't here an hour ago," Kira replied. Sato moved forward, scanning the walls with a handheld analyzer. Material composition matches the ship's alloy. No seams, no welds, no thermal signatures. "It's as if it's always been here." "But it hasn't," Jalen muttered. Calder stepped to the threshold. The corridor stretched straight ahead for maybe 20 meters before ending in a door. A perfectly ordinary door. Standard ship architecture. Standard control panel. Standard everything. Except it wasn't. "Any readings?" Calder asked. Sato shook her head. "Nothing unusual. No radiation spikes. No energy signatures. No life signs." "Could it be a fabrication error?" Kira asked. Sato gave her a look. "A corridor spontaneously appearing in a sealed starship?" "No." Calder exhaled slowly. "All right, we proceed carefully. Jalen, with me." "Kira, Sato monitor from here." Jalen nodded, hand resting on his holster. Calder stepped into the corridor. Nothing happened. He took another step. Still nothing. Jalen followed, scanning with his wrist-mounted sensor. Air composition normal. Temperature stable. Gravity consistent. They walked to the door at the end. Calder pressed the control panel. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a room. Perfectly normal room. A small lounge compartment. 2 chairs. A table. A viewport showing the starfield outside. Soft lighting. Neutral colors. A faint hum of ventilation. Calder stepped inside. "Looks like a crew rest area." "We don't have a crew rest area on this deck," Kira said from the junction. "You do now," Jalen replied. Calder moved to the viewport. "Stars look normal. Orientation matches our current heading." Sato frowned. "That's impossible. This room shouldn't have a viewport at all. There's a fuel conduit on the other side of this bulkhead." Calder touched the glass. Felt solid. Cold. Real. "Let's not jump to conclusions," he said. "We'll run a full diagnostic. For now." The lights flickered. Just once. barely noticeable, but everyone saw it. Calder stepped back. All right, we're done here. Everyone out. Jalen exited first. Calder followed. The moment they stepped back into the corridor, the door slid shut behind them, and the corridor was longer. Not by much, maybe an extra meter, but unmistakably longer. Kira's breath caught. Sir, that wasn't that long before. Calder stared down the corridor, jaw tightening. Sato? Sato scanned again. Readings unchanged. But the geometry... She stopped, recalibrated, scanned again. The geometry is inconsistent with the ship's internal dimensions. In English, Jalen said. It's bigger on the inside, Sato replied. Calder turned to Kira. Seal this area. No one enters until we understand what we're dealing with. Kira nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on the corridor. Felt like it was watching them. 2 hours later. The briefing room was tense. Calder stood at the head of the table, arms crossed. Sato projected a hologram of the ship's internal layout. The corridor did not appear on the schematic. We've run diagnostics on every deck, Sato said. No structural breaches, no fabrication events, no anomalies in the ship's logs. And the corridor? Calder asked. It's still there, Kira said. Still sealed. Still longer. Calder raised an eyebrow. Longer? By another half-meter, Kira replied. I measured it. Jalen leaned forward. So it's growing. Or stretching, Sato said. Or unfolding. Calder rubbed his temples. Hypotheses. Sato hesitated. Spatial distortion. Non-Euclidean geometry. Some kind of dimensional intrusion. Jalen snorted. You mean the ship is being eaten by a hallway? No, Sato said. I mean the hallway might not be part of the ship at all. A silence settled over the room. Calder finally spoke. We need more data. Controlled exploration. Kira, Jalen, you're with me. Sato, monitor from the junction. Kira nodded, though her stomach tightened. She had the distinct, irrational feeling that the corridor had been waiting for them to return. The second visit. The seal was removed. The corridor waited. It was now 21.5 meters long. The door at the end looked the same. The lighting was steady. The air was still. Calder stepped forward. Recorders on. Stay alert. They walked. The corridor felt subtly different this time. The hum of the ship's systems was quieter. The air felt denser. The lighting seemed slightly warmer. Kira's skin prickled. They reached the door. Calder opened it. The room inside was the same. Almost. The chairs were in different positions. The table had a small crack along one edge. The lighting was dimmer. And the viewport. Kira froze. The stars outside were wrong. Not drastically. Not obviously. But subtly. The constellations were slightly misaligned. A cluster of stars that should have been to the left was now to the right. A bright blue star that should have been visible was missing. Captain, Kira said quietly, that's not our sky. Calder stared at the viewport. Sato, confirm orientation. Sato's voice crackled through the comm. Our current heading is unchanged. The starfield outside the ship is stable. Then what are we looking at? Jalen asked. No one answered. Calder approached the viewport. His reflection stared back at him. Except, Kira's breath hitched. The reflection wasn't quite right. Calder's reflection was a fraction of a second out of sync. When he blinked, the reflection blinked slightly later. When he tilted his head, the reflection lagged. Captain, Kira whispered. Step back. Calder did. The reflection did not. It continued to stare at him, head tilted, eyes unblinking. Jalen swore and reached for his weapon. The lights flickered again. The reflection smiled. A slow, unnatural smile that did not belong on Calder's face. Out, Calder said, voice tight. Now. They backed toward the door. The reflection watched them, smile widening. The moment they crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them. The corridor was longer again. Much longer. At least 30 meters now. Sato's voice came through, panicked. Captain, the corridor just expanded by 8 meters in under a second. I saw it happen. Calder exhaled shakily. We're returning to the junction. They walked quickly, not running but close to it. The corridor felt narrower now, as if the walls were subtly leaning inward. The lighting flickered more frequently. The air felt colder. When they reached the junction, Kira turned back. The corridor was still growing. Slowly, steadily, like a living thing stretching its limbs. The third visit, unplanned. They sealed the area again. They argued. They analyzed. They debated whether to jettison the entire middeck section. But the corridor kept growing. By the next morning, it was 42 meters long. By midday, 53. By evening, 61. And then the door at the end opened by itself. No one was near it. No one touched the controls. It simply slid open, slowly, deliberately, as if inviting them. Calder ordered everyone to stay clear. But Kira couldn't shake the feeling that something inside the corridor was watching them. Waiting. Listening. At 0200 hours, the ship's internal sensors glitched. Every camera on the middeck flickered to static. Every motion sensor triggered simultaneously. Every environmental reading spiked. And the door at the end of the corridor whispered. Not loudly, not clearly, but enough for the audio logs to capture a faint, breathy sound. A single word. Come. The fourth visit, against orders. Kira couldn't sleep. She lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the ship. But beneath the hum, she heard something else. Faint, rhythmic tapping, like footsteps, coming from the corridor. She sat up, heart pounding. She knew she should call the captain. She knew she should stay in her quarters. Instead, she found herself walking, barefoot, quiet, drawn. The middeck was dark. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across the floor. The seal around the corridor had been reinforced with a magnetic lock. It was open. Kira froze. Someone had unlocked it, or something. The corridor stretched ahead, impossibly long now, at least 80 meters. The door at the end was open, a rectangle of soft light. Kira. She spun around. Calder stood behind her, eyes tired, jaw clenched. You shouldn't be here. I heard something, she whispered. So did I. They stared down the corridor together. The light at the far end flickered. A silhouette stood in the doorway, human-shaped, still, watching. Kira's breath caught. Is that? The silhouette stepped forward, and another stepped beside it, and another. 3 figures, all identical, all shaped like Kira. Calder grabbed her arm. We're leaving. Now. But the figures began walking toward them, slow and synchronized. Their footsteps echoing unnaturally, out of sync with their movements. Kira's voice trembled. Captain. The corridor is feeding on us. Calder didn't answer, because the corridor behind them had closed. The junction was gone. Only more corridor stretched behind them, endless and dark. The ship had vanished. Part 2. The Unraveling. The corridor swallowed their footsteps. Kira felt the sound die the moment it left her boots, absorbed by walls that seemed softer than metal, as if the ship's alloy had been replaced with something that listened. The air tasted stale, like recycled breath. The lighting strips overhead pulsed faintly, not with electricity but with something like a heartbeat. Calder kept his voice low. Stay close. Don't look back. Kira didn't want to look back. She already knew what she'd see. More corridor, stretching into darkness. The junction gone as if it had never existed. The ship, her ship, felt like a memory slipping through her fingers. The 3 figures ahead, her own reflections, walked with perfect synchronization. Their silhouettes were unmistakable. Her height, her posture, even the slight tilt of her head when she was thinking. But their movements were wrong. Too smooth, too deliberate, as if they were imitating her rather than being her. Captain, she whispered. They're slowing down. Calder's hand tightened on her arm. We're not engaging. We're finding a way out. Jalen, on Calder's other side, muttered, "Assuming there is one." The corridor hummed in response, a low vibration that traveled through the floor and up Kira's legs. She felt it in her bones. The three figures stopped. They stood about 20 meters ahead, perfectly still. The corridor lights dimmed around them, casting their faces into shadow. Then, as one, they stepped aside, revealing the door, the same door as before, the same soft light spilling from the room beyond. Calder exhaled. "It wants us to go in." Jalen shook his head. "We're not walking into a trap. We're already in one," Kira said quietly. The corridor behind them pulsed again, and the floor shifted under their feet, subtle but unmistakable, as if the corridor were breathing. Calder made the decision. "We move forward." Slowly, they approached the door. The three Kira figures watched them, heads tilted in perfect unison. Their eyes glinted in the dim light, too reflective, like polished glass. Kira avoided their gaze. Calder reached the door. It slid open without him touching it. The room inside was different again. The room of substitutions. The layout was the same. 2 chairs, a table, a viewport, but everything else had changed. The chairs were upholstered in deep red fabric instead of gray. The table was made of dark wood instead of alloy. The lighting was warm, almost golden. And the viewport, Kira's breath caught. The stars outside were swirling. Not drifting, not shifting, swirling, as if the ship were orbiting a vortex of light and shadow. The patterns were hypnotic, spiraling inward, drawing the eye toward a center that seemed infinitely far away and impossibly close. Jalen stepped back. "That's not space." "No." Sato's voice crackled through the calm, distorted, faint, as if coming from a great distance. "It's not." Calder frowned. "Sato, your signal is weak." Static answered him. Kira approached the viewport. Her reflection stared back, except it wasn't her. The reflection's eyes were black, pupil and iris swallowed by darkness. Its lips moved, forming words she couldn't hear. "Kira," Calder warned. She stepped back. The reflection smiled. The room's door slid shut behind them. Jalen spun around. "Captain." "I know," Calder said. "Stay calm." The three Kira figures were gone. The corridor outside was silent. Calder tapped his comm. "Sato, do you read?" Static. Kira tried hers. "Engineering, this is Lieutenant Ellen." "Respond." More static. Jalen tried the emergency channel. "Nothing." "We're cut off," he said. Calder nodded grimly. "We need to find another exit." Kira scanned the room. "There isn't one." "There has to be," Jalen said. "Rooms don't just." He stopped, because the room was changing. The walls rippled, like fabric caught in a breeze. The lighting flickered. The chairs shifted positions, sliding across the floor without sound. The table elongated, stretching like taffy before snapping back to its original shape. Kira felt her stomach twist. "It's reacting to us." Calder stepped toward the center of the room. "What do you want?" The room answered. The viewport went dark. Then it lit up again, not with stars, but with an image. The Valkyrie, their ship, but not as it was. The hull was twisted, elongated, stretched like the corridor. Sections were missing. Others were duplicated. The ship looked like it had been pulled through a narrow space and reshaped by forces that didn't understand how ships were supposed to look. Kira felt a cold weight settle in her chest. "Is that real?" Jalen shook his head. "It can't be." Calder didn't speak. The image shifted. Now it showed the middeck, the junction, the corridor. Except the corridor was everywhere. Branching, splitting, twisting, growing like roots through the ship's interior. Rooms were swallowed. Hallways were consumed. Crew members ran, but the corridor followed, stretching toward them like a living thing. Kira recognized one of the figures running. It was her. Calder stepped closer to the viewport. "This is a projection. It has to be." The image changed again. Now it showed the three of them, standing in the room, watching the viewport, except the versions in the image were older, tired, their uniforms torn, their faces gaunt. Kira's older self turned toward the viewport in the image and looked directly at her. Kira stumbled back. Captain. The older Kira pressed her hand against the inside of the viewport. A crack formed in the glass. Not in the image. In the real viewport, a thin, spiderweb fracture spread across the surface. Jalen swore. We need to get out of here. Calder grabbed Kira's arm. Door. Now. They turned. The door was gone. Not closed. Gone. A smooth wall stretched where it had been. Kira's pulse hammered. We're trapped. The room pulsed again. The walls rippled. The chairs slid across the floor, positioning themselves behind the three of them, as if inviting them to sit. Calder raised his weapon. Stay back. The room didn't listen. The floor shifted beneath their feet, tilting slightly, forcing them to step backward. The chairs moved closer. Kira, Calder said quietly, don't sit. I'm not planning to. The table elongated again, stretching toward them like a reaching limb. Jalen fired at it. The shot hit the wood and the table absorbed it. The surface rippled, swallowing the energy like water. Jalen stared. What the hell is this place? The room answered again. The walls dissolved. Not physically, visually. The metal faded, replaced by darkness. The floor vanished beneath their feet, though they still felt it. The ceiling disappeared. They stood in a void, the room's furniture floating around them like debris in zero gravity. Kira clutched Calder's arm. Captain, I see it. The void shifted. Shapes formed in the darkness, corridors, branching endlessly, twisting into impossible angles. Rooms floated like islands. Figures moved through the maze. Crew members distorted, stretched, duplicated. Kira saw herself again. Dozens of her. Some walking, some running, some standing still, staring at nothing, some staring directly at her. Jalen whispered, We're inside it. Calder's jaw tightened. Inside what? The corridor, Kira said. We're inside the corridor. The void pulsed. The furniture dissolved. The darkness folded inward, and the room reassembled itself around them. The door reappeared, but it was different. It was open, and beyond it was not the corridor. It was the bridge. The bridge that wasn't. Calder stepped forward cautiously. Stay behind me. Kira and Jalen followed. The bridge looked normal at first glance. Consoles, displays, the captain's chair, the panoramic viewport showing the starfield. But something was off. The air felt too still, the lighting too dim, the consoles too quiet. And the crew. Kira froze. The bridge crew sat at their stations, motionless. Their faces were blank. Their eyes were open but unfocused. Their hands rested on controls they weren't using. Captain, Kira whispered. Are they? Calder approached the nearest officer, Ensign Hale. Hale? Can you hear me? Hale didn't respond. Calder touched his shoulder. Hale dissolved. Not into dust. Into static. His body broke apart into flickering particles of light, scattering like digital snow before fading into nothing. Kira staggered back. They're not real. Jalen scanned the room. This whole bridge is a construct. The viewport flickered. The starfield vanished, replaced by the corridor. Endless. Branching. Growing. Calder clenched his fists. It's showing us what it wants us to see. The bridge dissolved. The room returned. The door slid shut. Kira felt something inside her break. Captain, we're not getting out, are we? Calder didn't answer, because the room was changing again. The walls stretched upward, elongating into a tall, narrow chamber. The floor tilted, becoming a slope. The lighting dimmed to a faint red glow. The air grew colder. Jalen raised his weapon. I'm done playing games. He fired at the wall. The wall absorbed the shot. Then it fired back. A pulse of energy shot from the wall, hitting Jalen square in the chest. He flew backward, hitting the floor hard. Jalen! Kira ran to him. He groaned, dazed but alive. I'm okay. The floor beneath him rippled and swallowed him. Kira screamed. "Jalen!" Calder grabbed her before she could reach the spot where he'd vanished. "Kira, stop!" The floor smoothed over, seamless, as if Jalen had never existed. Kira's breath came in ragged gasps. It took him. It took him. Calder held her tightly. "We're getting him back." "How?" she whispered. The room answered. The walls split open, revealing dozens of corridors. All identical, all stretching into darkness, all waiting. Calder stared at them. "It wants us to choose." Kira shook her head. "No, it wants us to get lost." The corridors pulsed as if agreeing. Calder took a deep breath. "We're not playing by its rules." He turned back toward the room. But the room was gone. They stood at the center of a vast, shifting labyrinth of corridors, each one twisting and branching into impossible geometry. The floor beneath them pulsed like a living thing. The air vibrated with a low, resonant hum. Kira felt the walls closing in. "Captain," she whispered, "I don't think the ship exists anymore." Calder didn't respond, because he saw what she saw. At the far end of one of the corridors, Jalen stood, or something that looked like him. His posture was wrong. His head tilted at an unnatural angle. His eyes were black voids. His mouth hung open in a silent scream. "Kira," Calder said quietly, "don't move." But Jalen, or the thing wearing his shape, began walking toward them. Slowly, deliberately, and behind him, dozens of other figures emerged from the corridors. Some looked like crew members. Some looked like Kira. Some looked like Calder. All distorted. All wrong. All coming closer. Kira felt her mind fracturing. "Captain, what do we do?" Calder's voice was steady, but his eyes were filled with dread. Part 3. The Labyrinth Breathes. They ran. Not because they believed they could escape. Kira knew, deep in her bones, that escape was no longer a meaningful concept, but because the alternative was to stand still while the corridor's imitations closed in. The figures moved with slow, deliberate steps, but the space between them and the living crew shrank with every pulse of the labyrinth. Calder led the way, choosing one of the branching corridors at random. The walls shuddered as they passed, as if reacting to their presence. The lighting strips flickered, casting long, warped shadows that stretched ahead of them like grasping hands. Kira didn't look back. She didn't need to. She could hear the footsteps behind them. Soft, synchronized, wrong. "Captain," she gasped. "They're gaining." "I know," Calder said, breath tight. "Keep moving." The corridor twisted sharply to the left, then right, then left again. The geometry made no sense. They should have been doubling back on themselves, but the space never repeated. Every turn revealed a new stretch of corridor, each one subtly different. Lighting warmer or colder, walls slightly curved or perfectly straight, floor plating smooth or ridged. The labyrinth was rearranging itself around them. Jalen's distorted double appeared at the far end of a branching passage, head tilted, mouth open in that silent scream. Kira's stomach lurched. "Don't look at them," Calder said. "Just run." They sprinted down another corridor. This one was narrower, the walls pressing close enough that Kira's shoulders brushed the metal. The air felt thicker, harder to breathe. The hum of the labyrinth grew louder, vibrating through her ribs. The corridor ended in a door they recognized. Kira skidded to a stop. "Captain, that's the room." The same door, the same soft light spilling from beneath it. Calder swore under his breath. "It's looping us." Jalen's double appeared behind them, closer now. Its movements were jerky, as if its limbs were being pulled by invisible strings. Kira grabbed Calder's arm. "We can't go back." Calder hesitated only a moment. "Then we go forward." He opened the door. The room was waiting. The room of echoes. This time, the room was stripped bare. No chairs, no table, no viewport. Just a vast, empty space with smooth metal walls and a floor that reflected their distorted silhouettes. The lighting was dim, casting long shadows that stretched and twisted unnaturally. Kira stepped inside cautiously. Her reflection on the floor moved a fraction of a second behind her, lagging like a corrupted video feed. Jalen's reflection didn't appear at all. Calder noticed. Kira? Where's Jalen's reflection? She turned. Jalen stood behind them, breathing hard, eyes wide. But the floor beneath him was blank. No reflection. Kira's skin crawled. Captain. Jalen looked down. What does that mean? Before anyone could answer, the door slammed shut. The room pulsed. The walls rippled outward, expanding into a larger chamber. The floor shifted beneath their feet, tilting slightly. The lighting dimmed further until the room was bathed in a faint, reddish glow. Then the voices began, soft at first, whispering, indistinct. Kira strained to listen. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, forming words she recognized. Her own voice. Don't look back. It's feeding on us. We're not getting out. Calder's voice joined hers. Stay close. We move forward. We're getting him back. Jalen's voice followed. What the hell is this place? It took him. I'm okay. The voices echoed around the room, bouncing off the walls, growing louder and more distorted. Kira covered her ears, but the voices were inside her head, vibrating through her skull. Captain, she shouted. Make it stop. Calder stepped forward, shouting into the void. What do you want from us? The voices stopped. Silence fell. Then a single voice spoke. Not Kira's, not Calder's, not Jalen's. A voice that sounded like all of them at once. You. The floor dissolved beneath their feet. The descent. They fell. Not fast. Not tumbling. More like sinking through thick, cold air. The room stretched above them, growing smaller as they descended into darkness. Kira reached for Calder, and their hands met, fingers interlocking. Jalen drifted beside them, eyes wide with terror. The darkness below shifted. Shapes formed. Corridors. Dozens of them. Hundreds. A web of impossible architecture stretching in every direction, twisting into spirals and knots, folding into itself like a living organism. The corridors pulsed with faint light, like veins carrying blood. Kira whispered, It's alive. Calder didn't argue. They descended toward a central chamber, a vast, circular space at the heart of the labyrinth. The walls were covered in shifting patterns of light, like neural pathways firing. The floor was a smooth, reflective surface that rippled like liquid metal. They landed gently. The chamber hummed. Jalen stepped back. This is the core. Kira nodded. The center of the distortion. Calder scanned the room. If we're going to find a way out, it's here. The chamber pulsed. A doorway formed in the wall, smooth metal folding outward like petals opening. Beyond it was darkness. Calder took a step forward. Kira grabbed his arm. Captain, what if this is what it wants? It wants something, Calder said. But we're not going to find answers standing here. Jalen swallowed hard. Then let's get this over with. They stepped through the doorway. The darkness swallowed them. The chamber of faces. Light flickered. The darkness dissolved. They stood in a long, narrow corridor different from the others. The walls were lined with mirrors. Hundreds of them. Each mirror reflected not the corridor, but a different version of the three of them. Kira stared at the nearest mirror. Her reflection was older, tired, eyes hollow. Another mirror showed her younger, smiling, innocent. Another showed her twisted, limbs elongated, face stretched into a grotesque parody of humanity. Jalen stepped back. This is wrong. Calder approached a mirror showing him in a torn uniform, blood on his face. These are possibilities. Versions of us. Or bait, Kira said. The corridor pulsed. The reflections moved. Not in sync with them. Independently. Kira's older reflection pressed her hand against the glass. The mirror rippled like water. Kira, Calder warned. She stepped back. The reflection stepped forward. Through the glass. The mirror surface stretched like a membrane, and the older Kira pushed through, emerging into the corridor. Her eyes were empty, her movements slow and deliberate. Jalen raised his weapon. Captain. More reflections stepped through their mirrors. Dozens of them. Older versions. Younger versions. Twisted versions. All stepping into the corridor, surrounding them. Kira's breath came in short, sharp gasps. We need to move. Calder nodded. Run. They sprinted down the corridor, dodging reflections that reached for them with cold, grasping hands. The mirrors shattered as the reflections emerged, shards of glass falling like rain. The corridor twisted. The mirrors vanished. They burst into another chamber and stopped. The Chamber of Truth. This chamber was small, circular, quiet. In the center stood a single object. A door. Not a corridor door. Not a ship door. A simple wooden door, old and weathered, with peeling paint and a brass handle. Kira stared at it. What is that? Calder approached slowly. A way out. Jalen shook his head. Or another trap. The chamber pulsed. The door creaked open. Light spilled out, warm, golden, inviting. Kira felt a pull in her chest. A longing. A memory she couldn't quite grasp. Calder stepped closer. Do you feel that? Yes, Kira whispered. It feels like home. Jalen frowned. I don't feel anything. Calder touched the doorframe. The chamber shuddered. The light flickered, and the door slammed shut. A voice filled the chamber. Not a whisper. A roar. Not for you. The floor split open. The chamber collapsed, and the labyrinth swallowed them whole. The return to the corridor. Kira hit the floor hard. She gasped, pushing herself up. They were back in the corridor. The original corridor. The one that shouldn't exist. Calder groaned beside her. Jalen lay a few feet away, dazed but alive. The corridor was silent. Still. Normal. Kira's heart pounded. Captain, did any of that? Calder stood slowly. It happened. Jalen looked around. But we're back. The corridor stretched ahead, ending in the familiar door. The door opened. Inside was the original room. 2 chairs. A table. A viewport showing the real Starfield. Everything normal. Too normal. Kira felt a cold dread settle in her chest. Captain, I don't think we escaped. Calder nodded slowly. No. Jalen swallowed. Then where are we? Kira stared down the corridor. The walls pulsed. Just once. A heartbeat. We're still inside it, she whispered. We never left. Part 4. The Collapse of Realities. The corridor pulsed again. A slow, rhythmic throb that traveled through the walls and into Kira's bones. The air felt heavier now, thick with something she couldn't name. The lighting strips flickered in a pattern that almost resembled breathing. Calder steadied himself against the wall. Everyone check in. Kira swallowed hard. I'm here. Jalen nodded, though his eyes were unfocused. Still with you. Calder scanned the corridor. We need to move. Staying still gives it time to adjust. Kira didn't want to ask what he meant by adjust. She already knew. The corridor was watching them. Waiting. Learning. They stepped forward cautiously. The corridor stretched ahead, unchanged at first glance. But Kira noticed the subtle differences. The floor plating was smoother, the lighting slightly warmer, the air carrying a faint metallic tang. Jalen wiped sweat from his brow. Feels like it's resetting. Or preparing, Calder said. For what? Kira whispered. The corridor answered. A soft whisper drifted through the air, barely audible. Closer. Kira froze. Did you hear that? Calder nodded. Keep moving. They walked in silence, the whisper fading but not gone. The corridor seemed to narrow around them, the walls inching closer with every step. Kira felt her breath quicken. Captain, she said quietly. I think it's compressing. Jalen tapped the wall. Feels softer than before. The metal gave slightly under his touch, like thick rubber. Kira stepped back. It's not metal anymore. The corridor pulsed again. The walls rippled. and the floor shifted beneath their feet. The first fracture. The corridor split. Not physically, visually. The space ahead fractured like a cracked mirror, splitting into 3 overlapping versions of itself. Each version flickered, unstable, as if the corridor couldn't decide which one was real. Calder raised a hand. Stop! The 3 corridors stabilized, each one stretching into a different direction. Left. Dim lighting, walls curved inward like a throat. Center. Bright, sterile, perfectly symmetrical. Right. Flickering lights, walls covered in shifting patterns like veins. Jalen exhaled shakily. It's giving us choices. Kira shook her head. No, it's testing us. Calder studied the 3 paths. We pick one. Together. Jalen pointed to the center corridor. That one looks the least hostile. Kira pointed to the right. That one looks alive. Calder pointed to the left. And that one looks like a trap. The corridor pulsed. The left path darkened. The right path brightened. The center path flickered. Kira felt a cold dread settle in her chest. It's reacting to us. Calder nodded. Then we choose the one it doesn't want us to choose. He stepped toward the center corridor. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the other 2 corridors vanished. The center corridor solidified. Kira and Jalen followed. The corridor stretched ahead, impossibly long. The lighting was steady. The walls were smooth. The air was still. Too still. Kira felt her skin crawl. Captain! Something's wrong. Calder nodded. I know. They walked. The corridor remained unchanged. Perfectly unchanged. Every meter identical to the last. Jalen frowned. We've been walking for 10 minutes. We should have hit a door by now. Calder stopped. Turn around. They turned. The corridor behind them was identical. Perfectly identical. No junction. No fracture. No sign of where they'd come from. Kira's breath caught. It's looping us. Jalen slammed his fist against the wall. Then how do we break the loop? The corridor answered. The lights went out. The dark interval. Total darkness swallowed them. Kira's breath hitched. Captain! I'm here, Calder said. Stay still. Jalen's voice trembled. I can't see anything. The darkness pressed against them, thick and suffocating. Kira felt something brush her arm, soft, cold, deliberate. She jerked back. Something's here. Calder's voice was steady. Don't move. A whisper drifted through the darkness. Closer. Kira's heart pounded. Captain. Quiet. The whisper grew louder. Closer. Jalen gasped. It's behind us. Kira felt breath on the back of her neck. Cold. Wrong. She spun, swinging her arm blindly. Her hand hit something solid. Something shaped like a person. The whisper stopped. The lights flickered back on. Kira froze. Standing behind her was a figure. Her figure. But wrong. Its eyes were black voids. Its mouth hung open in a silent scream. The skin was pale, almost translucent. Jalen stumbled back. Not again. The figure reached for Kira. Calder fired. The shot hit the figure's chest. It dissolved into static. Kira staggered. Captain. They're getting stronger. Calder nodded grimly. And closer. The corridor pulsed. The lights flickered. And the loop broke. The second fracture. The corridor split again. This time into 5 overlapping versions. Each one flickered, unstable. Leftmost. Pitch black. No lighting. Left. Dim red glow. Walls pulsing like veins. Center. Identical to the original corridor. Right. Bright white. Walls covered in shifting symbols. Rightmost. Filled with fog. Shapes moving within it. Jalen swore. It's getting worse. Kira pointed to the fog-filled corridor. There are things in there. Calder studied the 5 paths. We need to think. The corridor is adapting. Learning. It's using our choices against us. Jalen nodded. So we choose the one it doesn't expect. Kira frowned. Which one is that? Calder stepped forward. toward the pitch-black corridor. Jalen grabbed his arm. "Captain, are you insane?" Calder shook him off. "The corridor expects us to avoid the dark. That's why it's offering it." Kira hesitated. "Or it wants us to choose it." Calder met her eyes. "Everything here is a trap. But some traps are better than others." He stepped into the darkness. Kira followed. Jalen cursed and stepped in after them. The darkness swallowed them. The corridor of silence. This darkness was different. Not suffocating. Not cold. Just empty. Kira felt the floor beneath her feet, solid and unmoving. The air was still. The silence was absolute. Calder's voice echoed softly. "Stay close." Kira reached out, finding his arm. Jalen's hand found hers. They walked slowly. The darkness remained unchanged. No whispers. No pulses. No distortions. Jalen exhaled shakily. "This might be the safest place we've been." Kira nodded. "Or the most deceptive." Calder stopped. "Listen." They listened. Silence. Perfect silence. Then, a faint sound. Footsteps. Not theirs. Slow. Deliberate. Approaching. Jalen tightened his grip on Kira's hand. "Captain." "I hear it." The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Kira's breath quickened. "It's coming straight toward us." Calder raised his weapon. "Get ready." The footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a voice spoke. A familiar voice. "Kira." Her blood ran cold. It was her voice, but older, tired, broken. "Kira." The voice repeated. "Don't run." A faint light flickered ahead. A figure emerged. Kira gasped. It was her. Older. Gaunt. Eyes hollow. Skin pale. She reached out a trembling hand. "You have to listen. You don't have much time." Calder stepped between them. "Stay back." The older Kira shook her head. "You can't stop it. You can only choose how you lose." Kira's voice trembled. "What does that mean?" The older Kira stepped closer. "The corridor isn't a place. It's a process. A transformation. It's not trapping you. It's rewriting you." Jalen swallowed hard. "Rewriting." The older Kira nodded. "Every choice you make, every path you take, it learns. It adapts. It replaces." Calder raised his weapon. "Why should we believe you?" The older Kira smiled sadly. "Because I didn't believe her." Kira's breath caught. "Her?" The older Kira pointed behind them. Kira turned. Another figure stood in the darkness. Another Kira. Younger. Terrified. The older Kira whispered. "And she didn't believe her." Calder stepped back. "How many of you are there?" The older Kira's eyes filled with tears. "As many as it needs." The darkness pulsed. The older Kira staggered. "It's coming. You need to run." Calder grabbed Kira's arm. "Move!" The older Kira screamed. "No, not that way." The darkness exploded. The collapse. Light flooded the corridor. Blinding. Burning. Kira shielded her eyes. When the light faded, they were standing in a vast chamber. The heart of the labyrinth. The walls pulsed with shifting patterns of light. The floor rippled like liquid metal. The air vibrated with a low, resonant hum. And in the center, a shape, not a person, not a machine, something in between. A shifting mass of corridors, rooms, doors, and reflections, folding into itself like a living architecture. The corridor, its true form. Jalen stumbled back. What is that?" Kira felt her mind fracturing. "It's the source." Calder raised his weapon. "Then we end this." The corridor pulsed. A wave of force slammed into them. Kira hit the floor hard. Jalen screamed. Calder staggered to his feet. The corridor spoke. Not with words. With voices. All their voices. Closer. Choose. Rewrite. Become. Kira clutched her head. "Captain." "Make it stop." Calder fired. The shot hit the corridor's core. The chamber exploded with light. The walls dissolved. The floor vanished. Kira felt herself falling. 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 The return that wasn't. She hit the floor. Hard. She gasped, pushing herself up. She was in the corridor. The original corridor. The one that shouldn't exist. Calder lay beside her, unconscious. Jalen was gone. The corridor was silent. Still. Normal. Too normal. Kira's breath trembled. "Captain, wake up!" Calder groaned, opening his eyes. "Kira, where are we?" She swallowed hard. "We're back." Calder stood slowly. "Did we escape?" Kira shook her head. "No." She pointed down the corridor. The walls pulsed. Just once. A heartbeat. "We never left." Part 5. The Ship That Remembers. The corridor's pulse faded into a low, steady hum. Kira steadied herself against the wall, half expecting it to ripple beneath her touch. But it remained still. Too still, like a creature holding its breath. Calder scanned the length of the passage. "We need to assume nothing here is what it looks like." Kira nodded. "Including us." Jalen was gone. The absence felt like a missing limb, something she kept reaching for without realizing it. The corridor had taken him or replaced him, or folded him into one of its branching realities. She didn't know which possibility frightened her more. Calder took a slow breath. "We move." Carefully. They walked. The corridor stretched ahead, unchanged. No fractures. No distortions. No flickering lights. Felt like the ship again. Sterile, predictable, safe. Which made it more unnerving. Kira kept glancing over her shoulder. "Captain, what if this is another construct?" "It is," Calder said. "Everything here is. But it looks so normal," he finished. "That's the point." They reached the door at the end. The same door. The same soft light spilling from beneath it. Kira's stomach tightened. "We've been here before." Calder nodded. "And we'll be here again." He opened the door. The room that remembers them. The room was identical to the first time they'd seen it. 2 chairs, a table, a viewport showing the starfield. But something was different. The chairs were positioned as if someone had just stood up from them. The table held 2 cups, half full. Steam rose from one. Kira froze. "Captain!" Someone was here. Calder approached the table. He touched one of the cups. "Warm." Kira's voice trembled. "Do you think it was us?" Calder didn't answer. The viewport flickered. The starfield shifted. Kira stepped closer. "That's not our heading." "No," Calder said. "It's not." The stars twisted, rearranging themselves into a pattern she didn't recognize. A faint glow pulsed at the center of the pattern, like a distant beacon. Kira leaned in. "What is that?" The glow brightened. The viewport darkened, and an image formed. Not stars, not space, the Valkyrie, but not as it was. The ship appeared whole, intact, pristine. Lights glowed in every window. The engines pulsed with steady power. It looked exactly as it had before the corridor appeared. Kira's breath caught. "Is that real?" Calder studied the image. "It wants us to think so." The image shifted. Now it showed the bridge. The crew at their stations. Alive. Moving. Talking. Kira saw herself at the navigation console, tapping commands into the interface. She saw Calder in the captain's chair, giving orders. She saw Jalen at tactical, scanning the surrounding space. Her voice trembled. "Captain." "That's us." Calder stepped closer. "No. That's a version of us." The image zoomed in. The other Kira looked up, directly at them. Her expression changed. Fear. Recognition. A silent plea. Then the image shattered. The viewport went black. Kira staggered back. "Captain." "I saw it," Calder said quietly. The room pulsed. The cups on the table dissolved. The chairs slid back into their original positions. The lighting dimmed. Kira felt the air shift. "It's resetting." Calder nodded. "It's preparing the next stage." The door behind them slid shut. The room darkened, and the walls began to move. The room that rearranges. The walls didn't ripple this time, they folded. Panels slid apart, revealing new surfaces beneath. The ceiling lowered, then rose. The floor shifted, tilting slightly before leveling out again. The room rearranged itself with mechanical precision, like a puzzle solving itself. Kira stepped back. "Captain, I see it." The room expanded, then contracted, then expanded again. Each time the proportions changed: wider, narrower, taller, shorter. The furniture dissolved and reformed in new configurations. The viewport flickered through different scenes: stars, darkness, corridors, faces. Kira felt her pulse quicken. "It's searching for something." Calder nodded. "A configuration that suits its purpose." The room settled. The walls locked into place. The lighting brightened, and a new door appeared. Not the corridor door, a different one. A door with a symbol etched into it. A circle intersected by 3 lines, like a star map drawn by someone who didn't understand stars. Kira frowned. "What is that?" Calder approached the door. "A destination." The symbol glowed faintly. The door slid open. Beyond it was darkness, but not empty darkness. A faint outline of a room took shape, larger than the one they stood in, with walls that curved inward like the interior of a sphere. Kira hesitated. "Captain, are we sure about this?" "No," Calder said, "but staying here is worse." They stepped through the door. The spherical chamber. The chamber was vast. The walls curved upward and inward, forming a perfect sphere. The surface was smooth, metallic, and faintly reflective. Patterns of light pulsed across it. Lines, arcs, symbols, shifting in a rhythm that felt almost like language. Kira whispered, "It's communicating." Calder nodded. "Or thinking." The chamber hummed, a low, resonant sound that vibrated through the floor and into their bones. The patterns of light shifted, converging toward the center of the sphere. A shape formed, not a person, not a machine, something abstract like a knot of corridors folded into a single point. It pulsed with faint light, expanding and contracting in a slow, steady rhythm. Kira felt a strange pull in her chest. "Captain, I think this is the core." Calder stepped forward. "Then this is where we get answers." The core pulsed. A wave of light spread across the chamber. The walls shimmered, and images appeared, not projections, memories. The ship that was. The chamber showed the Valkyrie as it had been, whole, intact, moving through space on its survey mission. The crew worked at their stations. Kira saw herself at navigation, smiling at something Jalen had said. Calder stood at the helm giving orders. The image shifted. The ship encountered something. A distortion. A ripple in space. A faint shimmer, like heat rising from a desert floor. The Valkyrie passed through it. The corridor appeared. Kira whispered, "It started then." Calder nodded. "A spatial anomaly." The image zoomed in. The anomaly pulsed. The corridor grew. The ship's internal layout shifted. Rooms duplicated. Corridors stretched. Crew members vanished. Others reappeared in the wrong places. The ship twisted into impossible geometry. Kira felt her stomach twist. "It's been rewriting the ship from the moment we encountered it." The image shifted again. Now it showed the crew. Dozens of versions of them. Some alive. Some confused. Some wandering endless corridors. Some staring into voids. Some merging with the architecture. Kira looked away. "Captain, how many versions of us are there?" Calder's voice was quiet. "As many as the corridor needs." The core pulsed again. The images vanished. The chamber darkened. A single line of light appeared on the wall. A path, leading to a door. Kira swallowed hard. "It wants us to go there." Calder nodded. "Then we go." They followed the path. The door slid open. The bridge that shouldn't exist. They stepped onto the bridge. But not their bridge. This one was larger, darker, quieter. The consoles were arranged differently. The viewport showed a starfield they didn't recognize. Twisted, distorted, shifting like a living thing. Kira approached the navigation console. "This isn't our ship." "No," Calder said. "It's a version of it." Footsteps echoed behind them. They turned. A figure stood at the entrance. Jalen. Alive. Whole. But his eyes were wrong. Too still. Too calm. "Kira," he said softly. "Captain." Kira's breath caught. "Jalen? Is that you?" He smiled. A slow, deliberate smile. "Of course it's me." Calder stepped forward. "What happened to you?" Jalen tilted his head. "I learned the truth." Kira felt a chill. "What truth?" "That the corridor isn't a threat," Jalen said. "It's an evolution." Calder raised his weapon. "Stay back." Jalen didn't move. "You don't understand. The corridor isn't trying to destroy us. It's trying to include us." Kira shook her head. "Include us in what?" Jalen spread his arms. The bridge pulsed. The walls shifted. The starfield twisted. "In itself," he said. Kira stepped back. "Jalen, you're not him." He smiled again. "No," he said. "I'm not." The bridge dissolved. The floor vanished. The corridor swallowed them. The final corridor. Kira hit the floor. She gasped, pushing herself up. They were back in the corridor. The original corridor. The one that shouldn't exist. Calder groaned beside her. "Kira? Are you okay?" She nodded. "I think so." Jalen was gone again. The corridor was silent. Still. Waiting. Calder stood slowly. "We're close to the end." Kira nodded. "Or the beginning." The corridor pulsed. Just once. A heartbeat. They walked. The corridor stretched ahead. Longer than before. Darker. Quieter. At the far end, a door waited. A door they had never seen before. A door with no handle. No panel. Just a faint glow around its edges. Kira felt her pulse quicken. "Captain. What's behind that door?" Calder took a slow breath. "The truth." They stepped toward it. The glow brightened. The corridor hummed. The door slid open. And everything changed. Part 6. The origin that isn't an origin. The door opened without sound. Not a hiss. Not a click. Just a smooth, silent parting of metal that felt less like machinery and more like a curtain being drawn aside. Kira stepped through first, her breath catching as the space beyond unfolded around her. It wasn't a room. It wasn't a corridor. It was something in between. A long, tapering chamber stretched ahead, narrowing toward a distant vanishing point. The walls were smooth and metallic, but they curved inward in a way that made Kira's eyes ache if she stared too long. The lighting was soft, diffuse, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. Calder stepped in behind her. "This isn't ship architecture." "No," Kira whispered. "It's something else." The door slid shut behind them. Jalen was gone. The silence pressed in. Calder scanned the chamber. "Stay alert. This is the first space that hasn't tried to mislead us." Kira frowned. "How do you know?" "Because it doesn't need to." They walked. The chamber felt impossibly long. Each step echoed faintly, swallowed quickly by the curved walls. The air was cool, almost refreshing, carrying a faint scent of ozone and something else. Something like old paper or dust or memory. Kira shivered. "Captain, do you feel that?" Calder nodded. "Yes." It wasn't fear. It wasn't dread. It was familiarity. As if they had been here before. As if the chamber remembered them. The first echo. A soft hum filled the air. Not mechanical. Not electrical. Something deeper. The walls brightened slightly, and faint patterns appeared. Lines, arcs, symbols. Shifting slowly like constellations rearranging themselves. Kira reached out, touching one of the glowing lines. The chamber reacted. A ripple of light spread across the wall, and a faint image formed. Kira gasped. It was the Valkyrie. Not twisted. Not distorted. Whole. Pristine. The ship floated in space, engines glowing softly. The image was so clear she could almost hear the hum of the reactors. Calder stepped closer. This is before the anomaly. The image shifted. Now it showed the anomaly itself, a shimmering distortion like a tear in space. The Valkyrie approached it, unaware. Kira whispered, "This is when it started." The image zoomed in. The distortion pulsed. The corridor appeared. Not inside the ship. Outside it. A thin, shimmering line extending from the anomaly, reaching toward the Valkyrie like a tendril. Calder's voice was quiet. It attached itself. The image shifted again. Now it showed the interior of the ship. The corridor grew. Rooms shifted. Crew members vanished. Others reappeared in the wrong places. The ship twisted into impossible geometry. Kira felt her stomach twist. It wasn't created inside the ship. It invaded. Calder nodded. It's not a structural anomaly. It's an organism. The chamber pulsed. The image dissolved. The patterns on the walls shifted again. A new image formed. Kira froze. It was her, standing in the corridor. But not this corridor. A different one. A version of the corridor that was darker, narrower, more twisted. Her reflection in the wall was distorted. Her eyes hollow. Calder stepped forward. "That's not you." "No," Kira whispered. "It's a version of me." The image shifted. Now it showed Calder. Older. Tired. Standing in a room that looked like the spherical chamber they had just left. He was speaking to someone or something unseen. Kira felt a chill. "Captain." "That's you." Calder didn't respond. The image shifted again. Now it showed Jalen. Alive. Whole. Standing in a corridor that looked almost normal. He turned toward the viewer. His eyes were calm. Too calm. Kira stepped back. "That's not him." "No," Calder said. "It's what the corridor wants him to be." The chamber pulsed. The images vanished. The patterns faded. The hum deepened. And a voice filled the chamber. Not a whisper. Not a roar. Something in between. A voice that sounded like all of them at once. "You are not the first." The corridor speaks. Kira's breath caught. "Captain, did you hear?" "Yes," Calder said. "I heard." The voice spoke again. "You are not the first to enter. You are not the first to resist. You are not the first to break." Kira swallowed hard. "What are you?" The chamber pulsed. "I am the space between spaces. The path between paths. The corridor between realities." Calder stepped forward. "Why us?" "You crossed the threshold. You opened the door. You invited me in." Kira shook her head. "We didn't invite anything. You observed. You questioned. You entered. Curiosity is consent." Kira felt her pulse quicken. "You're feeding on us." "Yes." Calder clenched his fists. "Why?" "To understand." "Understand what?" Kira asked. "You." The chamber brightened. The walls shifted. The patterns rearranged into a new image. A human brain. Neural pathways firing. Synapses glowing. Kira felt a cold dread settle in her chest. "It's studying us." "Yes." Calder stepped forward. "What do you want?" The voice paused, then answered. "To become." The becoming. The chamber darkened. A single line of light appeared on the floor, stretching toward the far end of the chamber. "Path." Kira felt a pull in her chest. "Captain." "It wants us to follow." Calder nodded. "Then we follow." They walked. The chamber narrowed as they approached the far end. The walls curved inward, forming a tight passage that felt more like a throat than a corridor. The light grew brighter. The hum grew louder. The passage opened into a small, circular room. In the center stood a structure, a column of shifting metal and light, twisting slowly like a strand of DNA. Patterns pulsed across its surface. Symbols, lines, shapes, changing too quickly to follow. Kira whispered, "What is that?" The voice answered, "The interface." Calder frowned. "Interface with what?" "With me." The column pulsed. A faint glow extended from it, forming a thin line of light that reached toward Kira. She stepped back. Captain. Calder grabbed her arm. Don't touch it. The voice spoke again. You must choose. Kira shook her head. Choose what? Integration. Calder's voice hardened. We're not integrating with anything. The column pulsed again. The room shifted. The walls dissolved. And they were standing in the corridor. The original corridor. The one that shouldn't exist. Kira staggered. Captain, what just happened? Calder steadied her. It's forcing us back to the beginning. The corridor stretched ahead. Longer than before. Darker. Quieter. At the far end, a door waited. A door they had never seen before. A door with no handle. No panel. Just a faint glow around its edges. Kira felt her pulse quicken. Captain. What's behind that door? Calder took a slow breath. The truth. They stepped toward it. The glow brightened. The corridor hummed. The door slid open. And everything changed. Part 7. The door that opens inward. The door opened into light. Not bright light. Soft. Diffuse. Almost fog-like. As if the air itself glowed. Kira stepped through cautiously, her boots making no sound on the floor. Calder followed, jaw tight, eyes scanning every surface. The space beyond the door was neither a room nor a corridor. It was a threshold, a place that felt like the moment between inhaling and exhaling, between stepping and landing, between thought and action. The walls were smooth and pale, curving gently inward. The ceiling was high, vanishing into a soft haze. The floor was perfectly flat, perfectly featureless, perfectly wrong. Kira whispered, Captain, where are we? Calder shook his head. Not on the ship. The door behind them slid shut. The light dimmed, and the space shifted. The threshold of versions. The walls rippled, and faint silhouettes appeared. Human shapes, blurred and indistinct, like reflections in frosted glass. They moved slowly, drifting along the walls as if walking parallel to Kira and Calder in some adjacent reality. Kira stepped closer. Are those people? Calder studied the silhouettes. They're versions of us. The silhouettes sharpened. One looked like Kira, same height, same posture, but her movements were hesitant, fearful. Another looked like Calder, older, shoulders slumped, eyes downcast. More silhouettes appeared. Dozens. Hundreds. All drifting along the walls, each one a different version of them. Kira felt her pulse quicken. Captain, how many realities has it created? Calder's voice was quiet. As many as it needs. The silhouettes paused. Every single one. They turned toward Kira and Calder. Kira stepped back. Captain. The silhouettes pressed their hands against the walls. The walls flexed inward, as if the silhouettes were trying to push through. Calder grabbed Kira's arm. Move. They walked quickly toward the far end of the threshold. The silhouettes followed, gliding along the walls, their movements synchronized. The space narrowed. The light dimmed further. The silhouettes pressed harder. The walls bulged inward. Kira felt the air tighten around her. Captain, they're getting closer. Calder nodded. Keep moving. The threshold opened into a new space. A circular chamber. The silhouettes stopped. The walls smoothed. The chamber sealed behind them. The chamber of convergence. The chamber was small, barely large enough for the two of them to stand comfortably. The walls were smooth and metallic, curving inward like the inside of a sphere. The lighting was dim, casting long shadows across the floor. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal. On the pedestal rested a small, metallic object. A cube, perfectly smooth, perfectly symmetrical, perfectly still. Kira approached cautiously. What is that? Calder studied it. A focal point. For what? For everything. The cube pulsed faintly. A soft hum filled the chamber. The walls shimmered, and images appeared. Not projections. Not memories. Possibilities. The futures that could be. The chamber showed the Valkyrie whole intact, drifting through space. The crew moved through the corridors, unaware of the anomaly they had narrowly avoided. Kira whispered, "That's a future where we never found the corridor." The image shifted. Now it showed the ship twisted into impossible geometry, corridors branching endlessly, rooms folding into themselves. The crew wandered aimlessly, lost in a maze that had no beginning and no end. Calder's jaw tightened. "That's a future where we never escaped." The image shifted again. Now it showed the ship empty, silent, dark. The corridor pulsed through its interior like a heartbeat. Kira felt a chill. "That's a future where it consumes everything." The image shifted once more. Now it showed something else. Something impossible. The Valkyrie, but different. Larger. More complex. Its hull twisted into elegant curves and spirals, like a living organism. The corridor pulsed through it like veins, glowing softly. The ship moved through space with purpose. Kira stepped back. "What is that?" The voice answered, "A future where you become." Calder clenched his fists. "Become what?" "More." The cube pulsed again. The images vanished. The chamber darkened. A single line of light appeared on the floor, leading to a door on the far wall. Kira swallowed hard. "It wants us to go through." Calder nodded. "Then we go." They stepped toward the door. It slid open. The Hall of Echoes. The space beyond was long and narrow, like a corridor, but not the corridor. The walls were lined with panels that reflected distorted versions of Kira and Calder. Some reflections were older, some younger, some twisted, some serene. Kira felt her breath catch. "This is like the mirror corridor." Calder nodded. "But more focused." The reflections moved independently. One Kira stepped forward, pressing her hand against the panel. Her eyes were hollow. Her expression was pleading. Another Kira stood behind her, smiling faintly. A third Kira stood further back, watching silently. Calder's reflections were the same, dozens of versions, each one slightly different, each one watching. Kira whispered, "Why are they here?" The voice answered, "To show you what you could be." Calder stepped forward. "We're not choosing any of these." "No," the voice said. "You are choosing yourselves." The reflections stepped back. The panels darkened. The corridor narrowed. The air grew colder. Kira felt a pressure in her chest. "Captain, something's happening." Calder nodded. "It's converging." The corridor pulsed. The reflections vanished. The panels dissolved. And the corridor opened into a vast chamber. The heart of the corridor. The chamber was enormous, larger than any space that could exist inside the Valkyrie. The walls curved upward into darkness. The floor was smooth and reflective, like liquid metal. The air vibrated with a low, resonant hum. In the center of the chamber stood a structure, a column of shifting metal and light, twisting slowly like a strand of DNA. Patterns pulsed across its surface. Symbols, lines, shapes, changing too quickly to follow. Kira whispered, "This is the core." Calder nodded. "The true core." The voice filled the chamber. "You have reached the center." Kira stepped forward. "Why us?" "Because you are curious." Calder clenched his fists. "Curiosity isn't consent. It is enough." The core pulsed. A wave of light spread across the chamber. The floor rippled. The walls shimmered. And figures emerged. Not silhouettes. Not reflections. Versions. Dozens of versions of Kira and Calder stepped out of the walls, forming a circle around the core. Some looked tired. Some looked determined. Some looked afraid. Some looked calm. Kira felt her pulse quicken. "Captain." Calder stepped forward. "What do you want from us?" The voice answered, "Integration." Kira shook her head. "We're not merging with anything. You already have." The core pulsed again. The versions stepped closer. Kira felt the air tighten around her. "Captain." Calder grabbed her arm. "Stay with me." The versions stopped. The core brightened. The voice spoke one final time. "You must choose." Kira swallowed hard. "Choose what?" "Who you will become." The chamber darkened. The versions stepped forward. The core pulsed, and the corridor began to collapse. Part 8. The collapse of the possible. The chamber shook, not violently, more like a deep tremor passing through the bones of the space itself. The versions surrounding Kira and Calder flickered, their outlines blurring as if the corridor were struggling to maintain them. The core pulsed again. A wave of light rippled outward, passing through the versions like wind through tall grass. Some versions dissolved into shimmering dust. Others sharpened into clearer forms. A few stepped backward, merging into the walls as if returning to wherever they had come from. Kira felt the air tighten around her. "Captain, it's collapsing." Calder nodded. "The corridor is losing coherence." The voice filled the chamber. "No, I am refining." The core brightened. The versions stepped closer. Kira's pulse quickened. "Captain." Calder grabbed her arm. "Stay with me." The versions stopped. The core dimmed, and the voice spoke again. "You must choose." Kira swallowed hard. "Choose what?" "Your final form." Calder stepped forward. "We're not choosing anything. You already have." The chamber trembled again. The floor rippled beneath their feet, shifting like liquid metal. The walls curved inward, narrowing the space. The versions moved with the walls, forming a tightening circle around the core. Kira felt the pressure building. "Captain, it's forcing convergence." Calder nodded. "It wants to collapse all versions into one." The voice answered, "Yes." "Why?" Kira demanded. "To stabilize." The core pulsed. "To evolve." The versions stepped closer. The versions that shouldn't exist. Kira looked around the circle. There were dozens of her. Some looked exhausted, uniforms torn, eyes hollow. Others looked calm, almost serene. A few looked determined, standing tall with clenched fists. One version stood with her arms crossed, expression cold and analytical. Another stood trembling, barely holding herself together. Calder's versions were the same, variations of strength, fear, resignation, defiance. Kira whispered, "These are all possible outcomes." Calder nodded. "And it wants to collapse them into one." The voice spoke, "You are fragmented, incomplete. You must become whole." Kira shook her head. "We're already whole." "No, you are one of many. You must choose which version of yourself will remain." The versions stepped closer. Kira felt her breath catch. "Captain, I don't want to choose." Calder's jaw tightened. "We're not playing its game." The core pulsed. The chamber darkened. The versions froze. And the voice changed. It became quieter, more focused. "You misunderstand. You are not choosing who survives. You are choosing who you are." Kira felt a chill. "What does that mean?" The core brightened. The versions dissolved. All of them, except two. One Kira, one Calder, each standing directly opposite them. Kira stared at her counterpart. This version looked complete. Not perfect, not ideal, but balanced, strong, focused. A version of herself that had made different choices, survived different paths, learned different lessons. Calder's counterpart was the same, older, wiser, calmer. The voice spoke. "These are the versions closest to your true selves, the ones you have been converging toward." Kira felt her pulse quicken. "Why show us this?" "To offer you a choice." Calder stepped forward. "What choice?" "Merge." Kira stepped back. "No." The voice softened. "You must. The collapse is coming. The corridor cannot sustain infinite versions. You must become one." Calder shook his head. "We're not merging with anything. You already are." The chamber trembled. The floor rippled. The walls curved inward. The two versions stepped closer. Kira felt the air tighten around her. "Captain." Calder grabbed her hand. "Stay with me." The versions stopped. The core dimmed, and the voice spoke again. "You must choose." The collapse begins. The chamber shook violently. The floor split into shifting plates of metal and light. The walls fractured into overlapping layers of geometry. The ceiling dissolved into swirling patterns of symbols and lines. Kira staggered. "Captain, what's happening?" Calder steadied her. "The corridor is collapsing its own structure." The voice answered. "Yes." "Why?" Kira demanded. "To force convergence." The core pulsed. A wave of distortion rippled outward. The chamber warped. The versions flickered. The floor dissolved beneath their feet. Kira felt herself falling. Not downward. Inward. Into herself. The inward fall. She landed on solid ground. But it wasn't ground. It was a memory. She stood in the navigation bay of the Valkyrie, staring at the star charts she had studied 1,000 times. The room was quiet. The lights were dim. The hum of the ship was steady. Calder stood beside her. But not the real Calder. A version of him. A memory of him. Kira whispered. "This is before the anomaly." The memory Calder nodded. "This is who you were." The room shifted. Now she stood in the corridor, the real corridor, the moment she first saw it. The walls were smooth. The lighting was steady. The air smelled faintly of ozone. Calder stood beside her. The real Calder. He whispered, "This is who you became." The room shifted again. Now she stood in the spherical chamber, staring at the core. The versions surrounded her. The air vibrated with the hum of the corridor. The voice spoke. "This is who you could be." The chamber dissolved. Kira stood in darkness. A single line of light appeared beneath her feet. A path, leading to a door. The voice whispered, "Choose." The door that opens inward. Kira stepped toward the door. Calder appeared beside her. The real Calder. He took her hand. "We choose together." The voice answered, "No, you choose alone." Calder's hand dissolved. He vanished. Kira stood alone. The door glowed softly. She reached for it. Her hand passed through it. The door dissolved, and she stepped into herself. The convergence. Light flooded her vision. She felt her mind stretching, expanding, reaching across countless versions of herself. She felt their memories, their choices, their fears, their strengths. She felt their paths converging, merging into a single thread. She felt herself becoming whole. Not perfect, not ideal, just whole. The light dimmed. The chamber returned. Calder stood beside her. The real Calder. He looked at her with quiet recognition. "You chose." Kira nodded. "So did you." The core pulsed. The voice spoke. "You are complete." The chamber trembled. The walls dissolved. The floor vanished. And the corridor returned. The corridor's true nature. Kira and Calder stood in the original corridor. The one that shouldn't exist. But it was different now. The walls were stable. The lighting steady. The air calm. The corridor pulsed once. A heartbeat. The voice spoke. "You have become." Kira whispered, "What are you?" The corridor answered, "I am the path between what is and what could be. I am the space where choices converge. I am the architecture of possibility." Calder stepped forward. "Why us?" "Because you were willing to see." The corridor dimmed. The door at the far end opened. Beyond it was the Valkyrie. Whole. Intact. Real. Kira felt tears in her eyes. "We're back." The corridor spoke one final time. "You may leave, but remember every path leads somewhere. And some paths lead back to me." The corridor pulsed. The door brightened. Kira and Calder stepped through. The door closed behind them, and the corridor vanished. Part 9. The ship that remembers them back. The door sealed behind them with a soft, final click. Kira stood motionless, letting her eyes adjust to the familiar lighting of the Valkyrie's middeck. The air smelled right, sterile, metallic, faintly recycled. The hum of the engines vibrated through the floor in the exact frequency she had known for years. Felt real. Felt like home. Calder exhaled slowly. "We're back." Kira nodded, though a knot of unease tightened in her chest. It looks like the ship. Looks like, Calder echoed. They walked cautiously down the corridor. The walls were smooth, the lighting steady. The floor plating had the same microgrooves she had memorized long ago. Everything was exactly as it should be. Too exactly. Kira stopped. Captain, do you feel that? Calder paused. Yes. The ship felt still. Not dead, just waiting. Listening. They reached Junction C7. The impossible corridor was gone. Only the 3 original branching hallways remained. Storage, hydroponics, maintenance. Kira touched the wall where the corridor had once been. The metal was cool, solid, unremarkable. Calder tapped his comm bridge. This is Captain Calder. Respond. Static. He tried again. Engineering. Report. Static. Kira's pulse quickened. Captain, what if we're not back? Calder lowered his hand. We keep moving. The silent ship. They made their way toward the bridge. Every corridor was empty. Every room they passed was dark, quiet, untouched. No signs of struggle. No signs of life. No signs of anything. Kira whispered, "Where is everyone?" Calder didn't answer. They reached the lift. It opened immediately, as if expecting them. They stepped inside. The doors closed. The lift hummed softly as it ascended. Kira stared at her reflection in the polished metal. She looked like herself. She felt like herself. But she remembered the versions, dozens of them, each one a possible her. She whispered, "Captain, how do we know we're the real ones?" Calder met her eyes in the reflection. "We don't." The lift doors opened. The bridge was dark. Calder stepped forward. Lights. The lights flickered on. The bridge was empty. Every console was powered down. Every chair was unoccupied. The viewport showed a starfield, calm, steady, familiar. Kira approached the navigation console. Systems are offline. Calder checked the helm. Everything's in standby mode. Kira frowned. Why would the ship be in standby? Calder looked around the bridge. Because it was waiting. For what? Kira asked. For us. The ship that remembers. The consoles flickered. One by one they powered on. Navigation, engineering, communications, tactical. Each screen displayed the same message. Welcome back. Kira stepped back. Captain. Calder approached the captain's chair. The console lit up beneath his hand. Systems ready awaiting command. Kira whispered, "It's responding to us." Calder nodded. "It recognizes us." The ship hummed softly. The lights brightened. The air circulation increased. The Valkyrie was waking up. Kira felt a chill. Captain, what if the ship isn't just recognizing us? What if it's recognizing what we became? Calder didn't answer. The main viewport flickered. The starfield shifted. A new image appeared. The anomaly. The shimmering distortion they had encountered before the corridor appeared. Pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. Kira stepped closer. Captain, that's the anomaly. Calder nodded. It's still out there. The anomaly pulsed again. The ship's sensors activated. A soft chime sounded. Anomaly detected distance. 0.30 stability. Increasing. Kira felt her stomach twist. It's growing. Calder studied the readings. It's becoming more stable. Kira whispered, like it's waiting for us. The ship hummed. The engines powered up. The helm console displayed a new message. Course set destination. Anomaly. Calder stepped back. I didn't set that. Kira swallowed hard. Captain, the ship is choosing. The choice that isn't a choice. The lights dimmed. The hum of the engines deepened. The ship began to turn. Slowly, deliberately, toward the anomaly. Kira grabbed the console. Captain, it's moving on its own. Calder tried to override the helm. Manual control. The console flashed red. Access denied, course locked. Kira's voice trembled. Captain, the ship is taking us back. Calder slammed his hand against the console. No, We're not going back. The ship disagreed. The engines roared. The Valkyrie accelerated. Kira felt the deck vibrate beneath her feet. Captain! Calder grabbed her arm. We need to shut down the engines. They ran to engineering. The corridors were still empty, still silent, still listening. They reached the engine room. The reactor pulsed with steady light. The control panels glowed softly. Kira approached the main console. I can shut it down. Calder nodded. Do it. She entered the override code. The console flashed red. Access denied. Engine priority override active. Kira tried again. Access denied. Calder stepped forward. Let me try. He entered his command code. Access denied. Captain override disabled. Kira felt her pulse quicken. Captain. The ship isn't letting us stop it. The reactor pulsed. The lights brightened. The ship accelerated. The anomaly grew larger in the viewport. Kira whispered, It's pulling us in. Calder shook his head. No, we're going willingly. Kira stared at him. What? Calder looked at the reactor. The corridor said we had become, that we were complete. Kira stepped back. Captain, what are you saying? Calder met her eyes. We're not the same people who entered the corridor. Kira felt the truth settle in her chest like a weight. No, we're not. The ship hummed. The anomaly pulsed. The reactor brightened. And the voice returned. Not from the corridor. From the ship. You have become. Now you must return. Kira whispered. Return where? The voice answered. To the path. The path between realities. The anomaly filled the viewport now. Shimmering, pulsing, expanding. The ship accelerated toward it, engines roaring with purpose. Kira grabbed the console. Captain, we're seconds away. Calder stood beside her. Kira, she turned. He looked calm. Too calm. We can't stop this, he said. But we can choose how we face it. Kira felt tears in her eyes. Captain, I don't want to go back. Calder placed a hand on her shoulder. We're not going back. We're going forward. The anomaly pulsed. The ship shuddered. The lights flickered. The voice spoke one final time. You have chosen. You have become. Now you will continue. The Valkyrie entered the anomaly. Light swallowed the ship. The corridor unfolded. Reality stretched. Kira felt herself pulled in every direction at once. Forward, backward, inward, outward. She felt the versions of herself reaching out, merging, converging, becoming whole. She felt Calder beside her. She felt the ship around her. She felt the corridor within her. And then, silence. The ending that isn't an ending. Kira opened her eyes. She stood in a corridor. Not the Valkyrie's corridor. Not the impossible corridor. A new corridor. Smooth, bright, alive. Calder stood beside her. He looked at her with quiet recognition. We made it. Kira nodded. Where are we? Calder looked down the corridor. The walls pulsed softly. A heartbeat. We're on the path, he said. Kira felt a calm settle over her. Not fear. Not dread. Something else. Acceptance. She took a step forward. The corridor brightened. Calder stepped beside her. Together they walked. The corridor stretched ahead. Endless. Inviting. Alive. Kira whispered. Captain. What happens now? Calder smiled faintly. We continue. The corridor pulsed. The light grew brighter. And the path welcomed them home. This is the end of the sci-fi story. The corridor that shouldn't exist. Leave a like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more sci-fi stories. Thanks for listening.